Jess Henry and the Crazy Train. It's sort of a it may be steampunk, although I don't know that yet. It's maybe a clockwork story. Definitely apocalyptic, so we'll see what we can do with it. I really want to get this story right. Once I kind of came up with sort of some anchors for the single character we have in the story, I think there's some real value in it. So I'm really pushing to get the story in a good place. I'm also looking at being concise. So this is not a story that I'm gonna elaborate on too much. I want to have enough description to where the story carries, but my goal is to get through the beats as concisely as I can. So we'll see how we can do with that. I'll start by reading what I have so far, which I've revisited the story one time just to kind of make the beginning stronger, and now we're going to move on through to the ending this time. All right, so we got Jess Henry and the Crazy Train by J. Wilburn. She recited the names, all 12 of them. Hold on, I think I may have messed something up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. There are 13 names. I added one more while I was writing them. So we'll get that right. She recited the names, all 13 of them in order, without pause. They echoed through the metal hull of her body and off the stone walls of her dry, cold cave. Every name, every single boy and girl she had cared for, she had them. She said them out. Said them one after. All right, she said them one after the other. Let me see if I can write at least one sentence. That would be a good start. Every name, every single boy and girl she had cared for, she said them one after the other like a single phrase of a spell. Okay. Nolan, Hunter, Sylvia, Cameron, Connor, Christina, Leslie, Dream, Lupe, Santiago, Evil Girl 7, Pooh Bear, Blade. It was the order in which she had been put. They had been put under her care, and the order in which they died. The names weren't magic, but they heated her insides faster, which might be as close to magic as an automaton could get. Her gears turned, and the clockwork within her sent power through her metal limbs. There were more advanced models than her, but Jess Henry was the only one in these reaches to deal with this problem. It was a cold morning. She said, let me make that a so. It was a cold morning. So she said the names twice more, back to back. Nolan, Hunter, Sylvia, part of the Henry family, her first family. They had grown into teens before the plague. She had moved on to another family by then. Sylvia cried when Jess left. She cried again after her brothers died, and she choked to death on fluid in her lungs while in Jess's arms. Cameron, Connor, Christina, of the Carter family, died of the plague too. Leslie, Dream, both girls died from the mech uprising as Jess tried to hide and protect them. Lupe, Santiago, died in the fire caused by the mechs from the train. Evil Girl 7, Pooh Bear, Blade, had no parents but thought they didn't need a effing governess bot. Jess took care of them anyway, but couldn't protect them from the crazy train either. The engine whistled through the mountain passes as it tore its way through along tracks that had been out of use and forgotten for years. The mournful howl of the effing train's whistle echoed around her still in the cave. Nolan, Hunter, Sylvia, Cameron, Connor, Christina, Leslie, Dream, Lupe, Santiago, Evil Girl 7, Pooh Bear, Blade. Taking up her hammer, she fled from the cave and ran along the ties between the rails. She closed the distance on the terrible thing closing on her. At the curve, with the mountain on one side and forest descending the slope on the other, she stopped in the pale winter sun. The light dazzled off the ID plate attached low on the curve of her left side. Her jointed fingers traced the engraved numbers, letters, and symbols there in a way that was almost absently human. Xeno Maze Solutions. Then the company's logo was below that in a pattern of interconnecting gears. Governess Model 13 Lot-SN 13-J.355. Little Sylvia Henry learned to read under the governess bot's tutelage. Henry, learning to read under the governor's bot's tutelage, traced the designation numbers. Confusing the numbers for letters, little Sylvia read Jess and called the bot that from then on. She had screamed that name over and over as she died, a young woman in Jess's arms. Nolan, Hunter, little Sylvia, Henry, Cameron, Connor, Christina, Leslie, Dream, Lupe, Santiago, Evil Girl 7, Pooh Bear, Blade. She lifted the hammer, a solid metal thing forged as one whole piece with no loose connections and no weak points, onto her shoulder. The drum of the hammer was as big as the shell of Jess's head and just as hard. That damn whistle from that oncoming train, the crazy train as Pooh Bear called it, echoed through the stony landscape like a cry of war and pain. She went to work on the tracks. Here we go. Swinging low and from side to side, she knocked the rails loose from the track, or knocked the rails loose from the spikes. A stubborn rail would waver, but not come loose. Jay, thanks for being such a big inspiration in my own endeavors. Seriously, glad that I asked Keen about zombie books one summer day. Oh, thank you, man. I really appreciate you saying that. Like I've said before, I really appreciate your support on here, and it's been encouraging as I've tried something new here. And I think it's really improved my writing to kind of have a eyes-on audience kind of thing going on. It's definitely allowed me to experiment a little more. So I think the inspiration's mutual. I'm saying. The stubborn rail would waver but not come loose. All right. This threw off her rhythm and her timing. Time was something she lacked as the... It's nice to get the behind the scenes. Yeah, I've enjoyed doing it, and I've gotten some good response. It's always I'm starting to think that a lot of success in writing these days is more about like finding what other people aren't doing and kind of trying to get there first. So that's sort of what I'm attempting to do here, and I've gotten good response from it. So maybe this will be the path forward for a while. Time was something she lacked as the vibrations rose under her metal feet. She recited the 13 names again in a whisper, mostly unaware she was doing it. She was doing so. Now, I've repeated those names up here, and I think they carry a certain amount of power. They served a purpose as I was sort of breaking the backstory, and then served a purpose again. If I keep repeating them, though, I think they lack a little power. So I'm going to mention that she's saying them and probably not bring them up again until the end. I'm actually going to copy those and then use them at the end when I need them. But we'll try to just keep the action moving forward in this time. Okay, so she recited the 13 names again in whisper, mostly unaware she was doing so. Then she knocked those stubborn rails off too. Her eyes raised and lost focus as they tried to ratchet in and out on the distant mountains. a dark smoke trailed in a plume around the next curve. Alright. This train is getting closer to her. Well, I want to share a decent fantasy resource I came across with you if you ever decide to write more, which I, of course, encourage. Yeah, let me know, man. You can do it here in chat, or you can, message me on one of the other places we're connected. I'm interested to see what you're referring to. Her eyes raised and lost focus as they tried to ratchet in and out on the distant mountains. Alright, so we got this going. Dark smoke trailed up behind. She looked, let's say she surveyed. She surveyed the damage and knew it wasn't enough. She had seen the mechs repair far worse than this. They were destroyers by nature at this point. She was a caretaker by design, but playing a role of destroyer out of necessity. Alright. But they would fix the rails in order to get to their next victims. There weren't many humans left. She shouldered her hammer and collected the rails. Okay, say the cast aside rails. Alright. She could throw them down the mountain, but that wouldn't be enough either. One by one, she, how would I describe it? She looped them behind the bigger tree trunks just down the slope. Alright, let me put a comma there. Just down the slope, commas on both sides. And bent the rails around into Sherman bow ties. As she ran out of room on one tree, she'd move to the next largest one. The scream of the whistle was closer now. Up on the stretch of ties, lacking their rails, she could see the dark engine coughing up greater clouds of smoke. The red eyes of the mechs along the flatbeds of the train glowed through the thin mists. That would have to do. Alright. Jess ran past her cave and climbed the loose rocks of the last slide beyond. From the top of the heap, she turned to see sparks. Alright. Hey Zach, have you gotten used to speaking what you write aloud as you type? I recall you writing something about that in the Lit Reactor article. I have. If I have, especially when I have a couple streams in a row, I catch myself doing it when I'm writing normally, and especially now that I'm editing. I almost can't edit a story without speaking it out loud. And there's actually a number of editors that recommend that you do that, but I didn't used to do that before. And now that I've been writing and editing on Twitch here, it's more natural. I almost have trouble thinking through the story if I'm not hearing it out loud as I'm writing. Flying from the sharp wheels on the last bits of metal rail. Okay, let me make a new paragraph here. As much as she was able, she hoped the whole damn thing would derail and kill itself upon the rocks, tumbling down. All right. As the weight of the train pulled up, that glimmer of hope left her. Even though it was too late, she calculated that maybe she shouldn't have kept going around the bend. The crazy train might have missed the threat and not been able to stop in time. Before the dark train of death fully stopped, the mechs with their jagged joints and expressionless heads. No, I don't need a comma there. And their expressionless heads jumped off and climbed down the slope. One by one, they bent the metal bow ties out straight again. Then they applied heat from their weapons. And hammered the rails out true. She did not wait for them to start spiking the rails back into place. Jess recited the names again. Too loud. Let's make that one sentence. I have a bad habit of doing partials. I was just editing Room 138 that I co-wrote with Armand Rosamalia, and of course we went through a publisher, Madness Heart Press, and their editor was going through, and Armand and I both, especially when we write together, have a habit of using sentence fragments, which again is not necessarily a problem, but we did use a lot of them in that novel, and it was driving the editor crazy, so I actually went through and made an effort to pull some of those out, so the ones we did use were actually a little stronger, but now it's one of those things I'm aware of, and I try to avoid it when a whole sentence makes as much sense or can work just as well. So Jess recited the names again too loud. Let's get the mechs involved. A few mechs turned their glowing eyes down the tracks. Alright. She used the hammer to knock the loose stones on top of the pile down the slope. With those gone, she attacked the fissures, widened them with brute force, and sent larger boulders tumbling down as well. Alright, let me keep that the same paragraph because she's still hammering. When no good candidates remained, she broke away new rocks to add to the growing pile below. A few mechs stepped away from the repairs and marched toward the sounds of thunder. They raised their, I'll say, blank faces and hellish eyes to see the governess bot tearing down the mountain and covering the tracks ahead in a wall of rubble. Okay, let's make this a new paragraph. They were close, but did not attempt to climb after her. They saw her lips moving, but could not make out the names she spoke over and over. The thunder covered everything as lightning flew with each impact of her dented hammer. The whistle blew again, and she paused. Let me use her name again. I haven't used that in a while. And Jess paused. Alright. Moving right along here. Whistle blew again and Jess paused. The dark engine turned its wheels. Pistons, I don't know if I'm saying this right. Pistons pumped up and down at a casual pace. The mechs watching her started clearing the stone and rolling it down the hill. A few others did begin the climb toward her. Jess Henry did not wait for them as she ran down and along the tracks beyond the barrier she'd created. Rust fell away from her joints. One of her knees started to squeak from the lack of lubricant and regular maintenance. I know I spelled that wrong. Let's see if it catches. Nope. Alright, maintenance. There was nothing to be done. So she ran onward. Alright. This counts as a right along right asking for myself. Sure, man. I'll give you credit for every word that I write. You just add it to your word count and we won't even tell anybody. We'll keep that between you, me, and posterity here. Alright, so I'm going for a third beat here. So the first two beats were her trying to bend the rails, her trying to block the tracks, and then we're going for this third and final moment, which needs to be sort of the last stand. The ruins of the town finally came into sight. I believe that's right. The ruins of the town finally came into sight. Old scorch marks. Old scorch marks. Missing roofs. And clutter marked the places where people used to live. This part of town did not look well off enough to have caregivers like Jess back when humans still ruled the earth. But Jess had helped children from these neighborhoods after the war began. She tried to help, at least. The whistle howled again. The blast was so long that she could hear it drawing closer. The only reason that damn train was making that noise was to tell her, Jess Henry, that he was coming and death followed with him. Alright, let's do this one more time. I'm going to actually use the names this time. That's not right. Alright, Control V. Alright, so she says all these names again. Jess struck the street over and over again. She broke away what remained of the pavement. She broke away what remained of the pavement. Then she destroyed the recessed rails. She kept going after that. The crazy train had more time to react and stopped smoothly before the damage Jess had created on the edge of town. The mechs disembarked. Oh, I didn't even come close that time. Disembarked again. They started. Let me make the mechs a separate paragraph here. That'll make more sense since we're breaking a new section here. The mechs disembarked again. They started clearing the rubble and debris to see what repairs were needed. This town was long dead, but humans still lived and hid in the distance. So these machines were not done hunting. As the rubble shifted under them, a few mechs paused to see what was happening. The rest droned on in their work until they all fell into the long, narrow pit. The machines took a moment to right themselves and clear the crumbs of asphalt from their joints. As they started to climb out with no signs of distress, the ground collapsed around them on both sides and buried them to their necks. Alright. They cleared themselves out with more haste this time, but not fast enough for the next avalanche. Alright, not fast enough for the next avalanche. This collapse brought the ruins of houses down on top of them. Then water flowed from a broken pipe and washed over them in their grave. Now the mechs appeared frantic. Jess was sure they were incapable of fear, but she hoped for it as they submerged in her trap. Her only regret was they didn't have mouths to scream as they didn't have mouths to scream as their systems failed. It would be justice for all the children they had made to scream. All right. The crazy train blew its whistle again. This time, Jess thought it sounded angry, maybe even afraid. She could hope. She balanced on the busted pipe as it continued to pour water over the motionless mechs. Just almost lost her balance twice. As she carried her hammer over the pit to the train's side of the destruction. Alright, we're closing in on the end here. I feel good about this story. I like what I'm doing with it. Alright. The train blew its whistle in short, shrill bursts, like it was trying to scare Jess Henry into falling. The last blast sent flames into the air, lighting the strange scene. All right. As she approached the engine, things changed. The train fell silent. She had never been this close before and saw that she'd never been this close before and saw that the flames inside made the front grills appear like red eyes. That was the last thing her last 3 children had seen before they died. Alright, here's where we're going to use the names for the last time. Nolan, she said, as she swung her hammer and knocked one of the grills back into that red fire. The glow grew brighter. Levers shifted inside, and the train started to back away. All right. Hunter. Hunter, she cried as she knocked one of the front wheels out of alignment. All right. The train continued. Come on now. Train continued to back up. Sylvia. Let me have her do this again. Little Sylvia Hunter, who named me Jess. All right. She knocked the front wheel off its axle. All right. Don't need a quotation mark there. All right. Cameron, who loved science. She bent the other wheels different directions and halted the crazy train's retreat. Okay. The whistle blew again. Connor, who loved his brother and sister more than himself. Jess knocked the whistle off its mount, and it never blew again. Alright. Christina, who was too young to understand what was happening. She struck the boiler and dented it deep. Leslie, who was afraid of the dark unless we sang. She struck again, caving the boiler into the center of the engine. All right. Dream never stopped believing that everything would be okay, even at the end. The boiler breached and steam erupted in 3 directions like a scream. All right. Lupe was tougher than her years because she had to be. Alright, Lupe was tougher than her years because she had to be. Jess destroyed the walls of the engine that held no engineer. Santiago was afraid of fire, and I could not protect him from it or you. She started beating the bolts free of the plates. Evil Girl 7 was afraid to tell me her real name. The engine really did seem to cry out as the fires went dark. The fires went dark inside. All right. Pooh Bear carried that ratty stuffed animal everywhere. She would not stop until every piece was broken away from every other. She should, okay. Jess Henry shouldn't have been heaving for breath, but she was running hot. Blade. He died trying to save the others from you. And now you will kill no more. She stepped back and surveyed the scene. She waited for anything to dare to move, prepared to use her hammer against them. But all had fallen except for her. Jess Henry left the destroyed crazy train as a warning for any other mechs who dared to come this way. Let's make a new paragraph here for the end. She walked around the washout she had created and continued west. There weren't many humans left, but there might be some, and she wanted them to know it was over. They might not accept her because she was metal too. But she was designed to care for others. Let's do this as a final sentence. She had done the best she could. That's it.